Hi sewing friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name is Beth and it's nice to be sewing with you today. Today I'm working on my old Singer sewing machine. It's from the late 50s. I purchased it at a thrift store not too many years ago. Very inexpensive. It was I think $35 and I was really happy to spend so little on such a fun little machine. Last time we were together we made a little block, pretty small. And I had fun making some blocks and dreaming about what I'm going to be doing with these little blocks, but my mind was also thinking, sort of like you, what if I make it bigger? So I have some more sizes today, and I have some ideas about projects, maybe different color placement. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's get started. The largest block of the four different ones that I made so far is made with these 5-inch squares, and the 12 colored squares are 3.5 inches. I need 3 colored squares for each of my white squares, and I kind of mixed them up. I didn't want 2 reds or 2 blues on the same square. So I mixed them up, and now I'll be sewing from corner to corner. The first one here I'll draw a line just so you have a good idea of where I'm going, but after this I won't be drawing a pencil line. After getting a square on both sides of my white square, I'm going to add another seam for these half square triangles that I'm making from the leftover pieces. So I needed to sew away from my first seam just about a 1/2 inch, a little less than a 1/2 inch, and then I'll be cutting right between those 2 seams, and I'll end up with some leftover half square triangles that I'll be using in another project. Waited until I had 2 squares on each of those white background squares to walk over to my ironing board and press those triangles open. Before I move on and add some more squares to that background white square, I wanted to show you what it would look like to have an O made next to that X. The O is just a little bit bigger than the X, but this is something that somebody mentioned. I thought you might like to see it. Okay, I have one more colored square to add to my little quilt block here, so I will sew from corner to corner. I'll make those extra half square triangles, and we're almost done. Now I have my 4 pieces ready to go. I just need to make sure they're oriented the correct way. I haven't pressed those outside triangles yet because I know that they won't really be impacted by my seams right here. I'm going to wait until I get my next 2 or 3 seams in, and then we'll press this pretty quilt block open. This quilt block measures 9.5 inches, and when I was going through and making some of the different sizes, they didn't always come out exactly right, so I did square them up. And this one, actually, of all the ones I made, this one seemed to come out the closest to the size that it needed to be, 9.5 inches. Here's the first block I made from the last video. It's 3.5 inches. And I used 2-inch white squares to start with. The next block up, the next size up that I made, I used 3-inch white squares, and I used 2-inch colorful squares to make all those dark areas. And that block measures 5.5 inches. Then I went up just a little bit more, and I used squares, white squares that were 3.5 inches, and I added 2.5-inch colorful squares all around to make a 6.5-inch square block. And last of all, I made the block that I just shared with you, a 9.5-inch square block, and all this information will be down in the description box below. Here's one of my 3.5-inch square quilt blocks, a super cute little block, and you can make a quilt with tiny squares, quilt blocks, but I'm going to make a little pin cushion today. I just want to highlight that beautiful little quilt block. So I'm cutting 1-inch strips from some green scraps. I'm going to add those around to make the top of my pin cushion. I cut a backing piece of fabric the same size or just a teeny tiny bit larger than my pin cushion, and I'll be sewing all the way around except for a 2-inch gap where I'll be filling this pin cushion with some crushed walnut shells. I purchased a big bag of crushed walnut shells a long time ago, and I still have it, of course, and I bought it at the pet store. It was called Lizard Litter, and I have my little funnel, and I will be filling my pincushion with all of those crushed walnut shells. And there's my pretty little pincushion sitting next to all of the fun scrappy blocks that I've been making here in my sewing room. And here's the last little thing I wanted to share today was this little tiny quilt, which will either be a doll quilt or it might be a table runner. I alternated the colors. Some X's have the light square and starting with the light square, and some I started with the dark square. So I really think this is a beautiful way to incorporate this quilt block into your next quilt. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.